You stand at the edge of the world, where the Earth's solid foundation meets the vast, endless expanse of the sea. The air is thick with the scent of salt water, and the gentle crash of waves against the shore forms a rhythm almost hypnotic. As the wind whips around you, you feel the unmistakable pull of the ocean, drawing you into its ancient embrace. There's something primal here, something older than civilization itself. This is the domain of Oceanus, the titan who ruled the seas before the gods of Olympus ever took their thrones. The ocean before you is vast, a blanket of blue stretching as far as the eye can see. The waves rise and fall with a quiet majesty, as if they have always been this way, unmoving, unchanging. Yet, beneath the surface, there is an entire world waiting, a world of chaos and wonder, beauty and danger. This is the world that Oceanus, the great titan, once ruled. But what does it mean to rule the sea? What is the power of the ocean, and why was it so important to the ancient Greeks that they personified it in one of the greatest beings of their mythology? You might think of the ocean as just water H2O, the stuff of rain, rivers, and lakes. But for the ancient Greeks, the sea was not simply a body of water. It was a living force. It had moods, temperaments, and immense power, capable of both nurturing and destroying. And Oceanus, he was its embodiment. He was the ocean itself. Strength, its vastness, its unpredictable nature. The Greeks believed the sea was boundless, like the deep, uncharted realm where no man had yet gone. It was a place of mystery, where the known and unknown met. And in that realm, Oceanus was both ruler and protector, an ancient being who, according to myth, had no rival in his domain. Historians still argue whether the ancient Greeks truly understood the size of the ocean. The Mediterranean was their known world, and its edges were the boundaries of their perception. They saw the sea as endless, a powerful entity, a presence that could take the form of both the most serene blue and the most violent, tempestuous storms. For them, Oceanus represented all of this. But the reality of the ocean was even more profound than they could imagine. The waters they sailed were only the surface, the skin of an ancient living force. Beneath it lay something far deeper. Oceanus was the first of the titans, born from Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky. He was one of the primordial beings who predated the gods of Mount Olympus. Unlike the others, Oceanus had no interest in the wars and struggles that defined the lives of his brothers and sisters. His role was not to lead armies or overthrow deities, but to govern the endless waters that encircled the world. His was the task of keeping the balance, of maintaining the constant ebb and flow of the sea's rhythms, while Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades would go on to become the gods of the sky, sea, and underworld, respectively. Oceanus remained aloof, an ancient and unknowable being whose influence permeated the world. The ocean is, after all, timeless. It has existed far longer than the rise of civilization, longer than the myths themselves. And in its vastness, it holds the stories of every life that has ever touched its shores. You feel this as you stand on the edge, staring out at the horizon, as if the very water itself is whispering ancient secrets to you. But those secrets aren't for you to uncover just yet. No. Tonight, you're here to hear about Oceanus, to dive into his world and understand his power, his role in the mythological realm, and his connection to the endless sea. But before we go deeper, I want you to think about something. Have you ever felt the pull of the ocean? Not the way you might feel an urge to swim or sail, but the deeper, more primal call, the call of something vast and ancient, something beyond your understanding. Oceanus was the personification of that call. He wasn't just a ruler, he was a reflection of the ocean's endless power and mystery. And in his depths, there is much more to discover than mere waves. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The ocean holds a mystery that extends beyond human comprehension. Its surface, so familiar, hides an entire world underneath an alien, ever-changing expanse that is both beautiful and terrifying. Oceanus, the Titan, represented the eternal nature of this force. The waves that lap against the shore are not just water, they are an extension of something ancient, something that has existed since before time. And in this, Oceanus was both the guardian and the ruler, holding sway over the tides and currents with a power that made him one of the most revered figures in ancient mythology. But the Greeks didn't just see the ocean as a body of water. They saw it as a realm unto itself. It was not only the home of creatures like the Nereids, the sea nymphs, and the great beasts of the deep, but also the very lifeblood of the earth. Without the oceans, there would be no weather, no rain, no life. The sea was a source of both creation and destruction. It was the origin of life, and the final resting place for many who dared to venture too far into its embrace. And Oceanus, as the embodiment of that power, was central to the lives of all who lived on land. Historians often debate the significance of Oceanus' role in Greek mythology. Why was he so detached from the violent struggles of the other Titans? Was he merely a passive observer, or did he understand something that they didn't? Some scholars argue that his distance from the war between the Titans and the Olympians speaks to his deeper connection with the natural world, while others, like Zeus and Cronus, were consumed by power and the desire for control. Oceanus understood the importance of balance. He was the eternal force that kept the seas flowing, the tide turning, even when everything else was in turmoil. But despite his wisdom and strength, Oceanus was not invincible. The very ocean that he ruled was also capable of rejecting him. The gods of Olympus, led by Zeus, would eventually overthrow the Titans in a great war. Casting aside their reign and taking control of the world, Oceanus, in his desire for peace and harmony, never sought to challenge them. He had no desire to rise up or join the battle. Instead, he simply watched, from his place in the waters, as the world around him changed. It is here, in the quiet distance of Oceanus' reign, that the true mystery of his character lies. He was not a god who sought to shape the world in his image. He was a figure who embodied the sea itself, constant and unchanging, even as the world around him shifted and evolved. His power lay not in his will to control, but in his ability to endure. So, as you stand by the water's edge, feeling the pull of the ocean, you may wonder, what did Oceanus understand that the other gods did not? Was it his patience, his understanding of the rhythms of nature, that gave him the power to rule the seas? Or was it simply the fact that he was, in the truest sense, one with the ocean itself? Whatever the answer, it is clear that Oceanus' legacy remains embedded in the waters of the world. His power, though silent, is ever present, flowing through the tides and waves, a reminder of a time when the oceans were ruled by a being whose presence stretched beyond the horizon. And as you stand here, on the edge of the world, you begin to realize that the mystery of the ocean of Oceanus is far from over. The sun dips low, casting a golden hue over the waves as they shift and roll. Yet you stand in the shadow of something far older than anything you've ever known, far older than any civilization, any myth, or any history you can grasp. Here, where the endless sea meets the endless sky, you're about to learn of a Titan's origin, an origin entwined with the very earth itself. Oceanus was no ordinary Titan. Born in the shadow of chaos, he emerged from the primordial union of Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky, together. They gave birth to the Titans, beings of immense power, forged in the fires of the cosmos. But while the other Titans, like Cronus and Rhea, were warriors and rulers driven by ambition, Oceanus was different. His power did not stem from brute force or the need for control. No, his was a quiet, enduring force that existed before time and would endure after all others had fallen away. Historians still argue whether the ancient Greeks truly understood the significance of Oceanus' birth. Did they see him merely as a god of the sea, a titan who controlled the waters? Or did they recognize something deeper in his essence? Some argue that his origins were symbolic, representing the primal force of nature itself, something that existed before the gods, before even the first breath of creation. Others suggest that Oceanus' power was a reflection of the earth itself, an embodiment of the fundamental cycles that sustain life on our planet. The ocean, in its immensity, was the perfect symbol for the deep mysteries of creation. It existed before time as we know it, an ever-present force whose depths concealed unknown horrors and untapped potential. The Greeks believed the ocean wasn't just water, it was a living, breathing entity that connected all things. Oceanus wasn't just the ruler of this vast expanse. He was an integral part of it. His veins flowed with the waters of the earth, and his very being was intertwined with the pulse of the seas. As you stand on this shore, the breeze cools your face and the ocean's waves crash rhythmically, almost as if it's singing a lullaby, a song that has been sung for eons. The rhythm of the waves and the hum of the wind are all part of the ancient song of Oceanus, whose presence still lingers here in every ripple and surge. Oceanus's birth was part of a larger, cosmic pattern. From Gaia's fertile earth, the first gods arose, each one representing a fundamental force of nature. His siblings, the Titans, were the gods of sky, sea, and earth, shaping the very foundations of the world. But Oceanus, unlike many of his siblings, did not seek to conquer or control. He did not seek war, but rather harmony. His power was not one of destruction, but of creation. The seas, after all, are both nurturing and deadly, capable of creating life and taking it just as easily. But what made Oceanus truly remarkable was his connection to the world itself. He wasn't just the god of the sea, he was the embodiment of it. Where the ocean touched the land, there was Oceanus. Where the waves crashed against the shore, his power was felt. And where the tides ebbed and flowed, his presence was known. The sea, in all its moods, calm, violent, unpredictable, was Oceanus. There's something deeply profound about this, isn't there? Oceanus was not a god of abstract forces or distant power. He was, quite literally, the sea, the vast, unyielding ocean that has sustained life for eons. And this made him both a protector and a destroyer, a creator and a taker. His role in the world was more subtle than that of his siblings, and perhaps that's why he remains an enigma to this day. His essence was bound to the tides, a force so constant that it became both invisible and ever-present in ancient Greece. The ocean wasn't just a place of mystery, it was a metaphor for life itself. Just as the ocean is both a place of calm and tempest, so too are our lives filled with moments of peace and chaos. Oceanus represented this duality, embodying both the life-giving and the destructive powers of the sea. He was a reminder that life itself is in constant flux, moving like the tide, always changing, always flowing. Historians often debate the nature of Oceanus' power. Was he merely a figurehead, a god of the waters, nothing more? Or was he something greater, something more symbolic than even the Greeks realized? Some suggest that his power was so vast, so immeasurable, that it couldn't simply be contained by the seas. Others argue that Oceanus was the very embodiment of time itself, reflection of the eternal cycles that govern all things. The ebb and flow of the tide, the rise and fall of civilizations, the death and rebirth of worlds. This was Oceanus. But in all of this, one thing is clear: Oceanus was ancient. His influence over the seas was not just a divine right, it was an intrinsic part of the earth's creation. His very existence was tied to the primordial forces that gave birth to the world. Oceanus was not just a titan, he was a living, breathing force of nature. As you stand here, looking out at the endless sea, you begin to realize that Oceanus was not simply a ruler of the ocean, he was the ocean. His soul was the ocean's soul, his power was its power. And as the tides shift and the waves crash against the shore, it's as if the very waters are telling his story, a story that has been sung for millennia. But you're not just standing here to admire the view. No, tonight you're here to learn something deeper, to uncover the truth of this ancient titan. And while the seas may be vast, they are not infinite. The mysteries they hold can be uncovered, and tonight, you'll begin to understand the true nature of Oceanus and his endless connection to the tides that shape our world. As you turn your gaze back to the horizon, you realize that the journey ahead will take you deeper than you ever imagined. You'll discover more about the titan Oceanus, and perhaps even about yourself. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sun has long since set, leaving only the soft glow of twilight. The wind feels colder now, and the distant sound of the waves crashing against the rocks seems louder, more urgent. You pull your jacket tighter around you, feeling the steady pulse of the ocean as if it's alive, breathing, echoing the rhythms of some long-forgotten heartbeat. The waves pull back and crash again, as if they too are moving to the same timeless beat that Oceanus once commanded. You sense it now. The power of the sea isn't just the force of water and wind, but something deeper, something primal, something that Oceanus once mastered. Oceanus wasn't just the god of the sea, he was the very essence of it. His dominion stretched far beyond the visible waters, deep into the heart of the ocean itself. His control wasn't one of mere governance, it was a reflection of his own being. The seas were his soul, and in return, the waters reflected every part of him. Where the ocean was calm, so too was he. Where the storms raged, so did his spirit. The tumult of the sea mirrored his moods, just as the quiet stillness of the waters embodied his moments of serenity. It's easy to think of the ocean as something distant, separate from us, but in truth it's always been intimately connected to the human experience. Ancient sailors, the earliest explorers, revered the seas, not just because they were a source of travel and discovery, but because the sea was a place of mystery and power. To the ancient Greeks, the sea was the source of both life and death. It was capable of providing the nourishment of fish and the destruction of storms, reflecting the dual nature of the god who controlled it. Oceanus embodied this paradox perfectly. He was vast, but he was not unapproachable. He was the water that lapped gently against the shore, yet also the tempest that could sweep everything away. But what made his power so unique was not just his control over the water, it was his connection to the heart of the ocean. For Oceanus, the sea wasn't a distant force he ruled over, it was part of him, something he understood intimately. He was the pulse of the water, the ebb and flow of the tides, the mysterious creatures that slumbered in the depths. His power wasn't just in his ability to command the waves, it was in his deep understanding of the world beneath them. Historians still argue whether Oceanus was a god of creation or a god of destruction, but this is a false dichotomy. Oceanus was not simply one or the other. He was both. He could create life from the sea, his waters teeming with creatures, yet his waters were also capable of swallowing civilizations whole. To the Greeks, the sea wasn't just a place of beauty, it was a dangerous realm that could claim everything in an instant. So it was with Oceanus. His power was not a soft and comforting rule, it was an unstoppable force that shaped and reshaped the world around him. When you step closer to the edge of the shore, feeling the spray of salt water against your skin, you begin to understand the connection between Oceanus and the ocean. The water feels alive, as if it has a soul of its own, a presence that cannot be ignored. And in that presence, you feel Oceanus himself. The sea is not just a passive thing. It has a will of its own, a deep, mysterious energy that cannot be fully understood. Perhaps that's what made Oceanus such a compelling figure in Greek mythology. Unlike many other gods, whose power was rooted in their ability to dominate and control, Oceanus' power was rooted in understanding. He understood the ocean, its moods, its depths, its currents, and its tides. He was not a king who imposed his will on the world. He was a god who lived in harmony with it. You've been listening to the sea for some time now, its whispering voice a constant companion. But the ocean isn't simply a passive presence. No, like the depths, there are things beneath the surface, things that you can't see but know are there. The ocean is both known and unknown, much like Oceanus himself. There are things in the deep that are too vast to be understood, yet too important to ignore. The deep, dark trenches beneath the waves hold creatures and mysteries beyond comprehension, and it is in these depths where Oceanus' true power lay. The Greeks recognized that the sea was a place of great power, but they also saw it as a reflection of the human soul. It could be calm and soothing, or it could be dark and treacherous, shifting in a moment, but it was never still. Just as the waters are constantly moving, so too is the human spirit. Oceanus was not just the ruler of the seas. He was a reflection of the very soul of the world. His heart was the deep, mysterious ocean. His spirit intertwined with its ever-changing tides. Oceanus' rule over the waters was more than just a matter of control, it was a matter of understanding. To rule the seas, he needed to know them better than any other god. He had to understand their rhythms, their moods, their ever-changing nature. He needed to understand the creatures of the deep, the unknown currents that ran beneath the waves, the gentle kiss of the tide, and the violent roar of a storm. Oceanus' heart was the ocean's heart, and his soul was as deep as the waters themselves. But the ocean is a capricious thing. It does not bend to the will of any one being, not even a titan. Oceanus may have ruled the seas, but the seas were not always loyal. They could change in an instant, turning from calm to chaotic, from serene to destructive. And perhaps this was the very nature of Oceanus' power, his ability to coexist with the unpredictable. Where the gods of Olympus fought and struggled for power, Oceanus knew that true control came not from domination, but from understanding. Oceanus' dominion was one of harmony with the natural world. While the Olympians clashed over rule and conquest, Oceanus moved with the tides, understanding that some things were beyond control, that the world would shift and change as it always had. And perhaps, in that understanding, he held the greatest power of all the power to endure. As you stand here on the edge of the water, the wind pulling at your hair, the ocean before you seems more alive than ever. It whispers in a language you can't quite understand, but it doesn't matter. You've begun to understand, if only a little, the nature of the sea and the titan who once ruled it. The ocean is not something to be controlled, it's something to be embraced, understood, and respected. And Oceanus knew this better than any other god. Now, the tide has shifted once again, and the waves are moving with purpose. You feel the pull, the deep, ancient pull of the ocean, and you realize that this journey, like the sea itself, is far from over. The cool night air brushes against your skin as the sea continues its timeless rhythm, each wave crashing against the shore like the heartbeat of the earth itself. With every crash, with every surge, the pulse of the ocean seems to speak to you, calling you deeper into its embrace. And as you listen to the endless tide, you begin to understand Oceanus wasn't just a god of the seas, he was its essence. His dominion over the waters wasn't born from violent conquest, but from an understanding so profound that it shaped the very nature of the ocean itself. Oceanus ruled the seas for eons, a presence that was as unyielding as the water he commanded. But his rule was not one marked by the fierce wars and violent conquests that defined many of the other gods and titans. Oceanus was a ruler in the truest sense, not a ruler of fear or force, but one of harmony. His realm was not the land where power could be seized and empires built, but the ever-shifting, unpredictable waters that surrounded the earth. There was no throne for him, no grand palace in the heavens. Oceanus ruled the ocean not through domination, but through a deep, intimate understanding of its nature. In many ways, this made him different from the other titans. While his siblings, like Cronus and Rhea, sought to claim power through conquest and war, Oceanus was a being of patience. He didn't seek control over others, he sought harmony with the natural world. His power came from his ability to flow with the currents, to understand the rhythms of the sea, and to keep its balance steady. The ocean, in all its vastness, was his to govern, but it was also his to protect. It was a realm of life and death, of creation and destruction, of calm and storm. And in this, Oceanus was not just a ruler, but a guardian. Historians often argue about Oceanus's place in the pantheon of gods and titans. Was he simply a god of the seas, a being who controlled the waves and tides, or was he something more? Some scholars claim that Oceanus' role was far more symbolic, representing the eternal nature of the world. His reign over the waters was not just a matter of control, but of balance. Without the tides, the world would not function as it does. Without Oceanus, the world's very rhythms would falter. But even as Oceanus ruled with wisdom and restraint, the world around him was changing. The Olympians, young gods who were eager to claim their own territories and powers, were rising. They were bold, ambitious, and unafraid to challenge the older gods and titans. Zeus, the king of the gods, had already begun his quest to overthrow the titans and claim dominion over the heavens and the earth. Poseidon, once a brother to Oceanus, sought dominion over the seas and the waters themselves, where Oceanus had once ruled with patience and understanding. The Olympians were ready to seize their power through force and conquest. You might wonder what made Oceanus stand apart from the other titans. In the great war against the Olympians, did Oceanus remain detached, watching from the sidelines as the world around him crumbled? Was it a lack of desire for power, or was it a deeper understanding that conflict would only destroy what he had worked so hard to maintain? For Oceanus, the answer was simple. The seas were too important to be ruled by force. They were unpredictable, capricious, and violent at times, but they were also the lifeblood of the world. The oceans did not belong to any one god or titan. They belonged to the world itself. Oceanus understood this. He knew that true power didn't come from forcing one's will upon the earth, but from understanding the balance of forces that governed it. He ruled not by imposing his will, but by maintaining the balance of the natural world, by ensuring that the tides rose and fell in harmony, that the currents flowed without interruption. This balance was what made Oceanus' rule so powerful and so enduring. He could control the sea, yes, but it was only by understanding the forces that shaped it, by working with them rather than against them, that he could truly govern it. This wisdom, this harmony, made him one of the most powerful beings in the world. The ocean was a force of nature, unpredictable, untamable, yet vital. And Oceanus was its keeper, its guardian, ensuring that its rhythms remained steady, no matter what upheaval occurred on the land. But the rise of the Olympians was inevitable. As they grew in power, they sought to reshape the world in their own image. Their ascent marked the end of the era of the Titans, and with it came the inevitable clash. Oceanus, however, remained removed from the conflict, watching as the war between the Titans and the Olympians unfolded. He did not side with one group or the other. Instead, he chose to watch, knowing that in the end the tide would turn, just as it always had. Perhaps this was the greatest strength and the greatest tragedy of Oceanus' reign, his refusal to take sides. He understood the rhythms of the world, the way the tides ebb and flow, and he knew that power would shift. But while Zeus and the other Olympians rose to claim dominion over the world, Oceanus was left to watch from the shore, a silent observer of the inevitable collapse of the old order. This wasn't to say that Oceanus didn't play a role in the fall of the Titans. His indifference to the conflict left him vulnerable. His failure to join the fight for the Titans' survival was ultimately his undoing. He did not fall in battle, as many of the other Titans did. His downfall came in his refusal to act, to align himself with one side or the other. In the end, his detachment, the very thing that had once made him so powerful, was what led to his downfall. The rise of the Olympians marked the end of Oceanus' reign, but it didn't mark the end of his influence. His power, although diminished, still lingered in the oceans. His essence could still be felt in the tides, in the ebb and flow of the water. While the gods of Olympus may have taken control of the world, the seas, with all their mysteries and depth, were still the domain of Oceanus. As the waves crash against the shore, you realize that the story of Oceanus is far from over. Though the Titans may have fallen, the ocean remains. And in the heart of the ocean, deep beneath the surface, the legacy of Oceanus lives on. His rule was one of balance, of harmony with nature, and in the depths of the sea, that balance is still being maintained, even as the world above changes. The ocean continues its eternal rhythm, just as it always has. Now, as you listen to the waves, the winds, and the soft murmur of the ocean's call, you realize that the tides of fate have yet to turn. The journey is far from over. The ocean stretches out before you in its endless expanse, and with it comes the inevitable feeling of insignificance, the knowledge that what you see before you is but a fraction of the whole. The water's vastness seems to echo a deeper truth. Nothing in this world is ever entirely under control, not even the gods. As you gaze at the rolling waves, it's hard not to feel the pull of something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface. For Oceanus, this deeper pull was both his strength and his downfall. The betrayal he faced came not from distant enemies, but from those who should have been his closest allies. The very family that had once stood together in unity now began to tear itself apart. Oceanus had ruled the oceans with wisdom, but in doing so he had distanced himself from the politics of his own family. His realm was the sea, and he had always believed that. His dominion over it was enough. But the world was changing, and with that change came the betrayal that would rock him to his very core. You see, Oceanus had always been the quiet one, while Zeus and his siblings clashed and fought for dominion over the heavens, earth, and the underworld. Oceanus had remained a distant figure, content to rule the waters without interference. He was not a god of war, and he had no desire to claim dominion over the other realms. His power was enough. But this sense of detachment made him vulnerable. His very distance from the affairs of the Titans was what ultimately led to his downfall. Historians still argue whether Oceanus's detachment from the wars of the gods was a strength or a weakness. Some claim that his wisdom lay in his refusal to get involved in the petty struggles of others. He saw the coming war between the Olympians and the Titans as something beneath him, a battle driven by greed and ambition, and he chose not to participate. It was a realm of balance, of natural order, and he believed that, by staying out of the battle, he could preserve that balance. But others argue that this very detachment, his refusal to choose sides, was what ultimately led to his fall. By not aligning himself with either the Olympians or the Titans, Oceanus had left himself vulnerable to betrayal. His own family, those closest to him, saw his neutrality as a weakness. And when the time came to choose sides in the battle for the world, Oceanus was left standing alone, the ocean's ruler abandoned by those he had once considered his allies. The betrayal came not from an outside enemy, but from within his own bloodline. It was his own children, his many sons and daughters, that turned against him, driven by their own desires for power. Oceanus had fathered many of the ancient river gods, including the mighty rivers like Oceanus, Alpheus, and the sacred Nile. These children, born of his very essence, had been raised to believe in the power of the sea and the importance of maintaining the balance of nature. But as the war between the Olympians and the Titans escalated, his children began to question their father's decision to remain neutral. One by one, Oceanus' children joined the ranks of the Olympians, forsaking their father's wisdom and aligning themselves with Zeus and his siblings. They saw the rise of the Olympians as an opportunity to claim more than just the rivers of the world. They wanted dominion over all the waters, to expand their power beyond the rivers and into the seas. And in doing so, they turned against Oceanus, rejecting the very balance he had taught them to cherish. You can almost feel the sting of this betrayal in the salt air as you stand on the shore. The sea has always been a place of mystery, of life and death, creation and destruction. But in that moment, it also became a reflection of the broken trust that had once existed between Oceanus and his own kin. The betrayal was not an external force that attacked him. It was the slow, insidious turning of his own family against him, one that destroyed everything he had worked to preserve. It's easy to dismiss betrayal as something that happens only in the realms of mortals. We often think of gods as beings beyond such petty emotions. But the truth is, even the greatest of beings are not immune to the pain of betrayal. For Oceanus, the most painful part was not the loss of power, but the loss of his children, very beings he had brought into existence, who had once shared his vision of harmony with the seas. These were the beings he had nurtured, raised, and loved as his own. And yet, they had abandoned him when it mattered most. This is where the true tragedy of Oceanus lies. He wasn't defeated by a great enemy or a mighty foe. His fall came from within, from the very forces he had helped to create. He had believed in the unity of his family, in the idea that together they could maintain the balance of the world. But in the end, it was that very unity that unraveled, leaving him alone, isolated, and powerless to stop the inevitable. Historians still debate whether Oceanus ever truly understood the depth of the betrayal. Did he see it coming? Did he know that by remaining neutral, he would alienate those closest to him? Some say that he did, others argue that Oceanus was simply too focused on maintaining the natural order to notice the signs of rebellion within his own ranks. Regardless, the betrayal marked the end of an era for the Titans, and for Oceanus himself. As the waves crash against the shore, you feel the weight of his fall. It's a silent kind of tragedy, one that doesn't scream for attention, but instead exists in the stillness of the ocean. Oceanus may have ruled the seas, but in the end, it was his own family that turned against him. His reign was not brought down by an enemy from outside, but by the very forces he had created. And yet, as you stand on the edge of the ocean, feeling the pull of the tides, you know that this betrayal, like all things, is part of the greater rhythm of the world. The waves ebb and flow, and with every tide, there is a sense of renewal. Perhaps Oceanus' downfall wasn't the end, but a part of the cycle, just another wave that crashed and receded, only to rise again. For now, the ocean remains, and with it the legacy of the Titan who once ruled it. The ocean seems to grow quieter as the night deepens. The waves are gentler now, almost as if they are listening to something unseen, whispering secrets to the stars above. The moon, bright and full, casts its silver light across the water, illuminating the depths beneath. In this stillness, it's easy to forget the power that the sea holds. But beneath the calm, there's a deeper current, one that moves with purpose, one that has been flowing since time itself began. Oceanus, as the Titan of the seas, was more than just a ruler. He was a manifestation of the ocean's ancient power, an enduring force that was woven into the very fabric of the earth. His influence stretched far beyond the waters, touching everything in the world. The ocean was a reflection of his power, but his power was not just physical, it was spiritual. Oceanus was not just a god of the sea, he was its essence. His very being pulsed with the energy of the waters, a force that could shape the world and bend nature to his will. This connection to the ocean gave Oceanus a unique form of power, one that was unlike any other gods, where Zeus could command the skies with thunder and Poseidon could shake the earth with his trident. Oceanus controlled the most ancient and primal of forces, the tides, the waves, and the currents. But this power was not just about control. It was about understanding. Oceanus knew that the ocean was not something to be tamed, was something to be respected, something that could not be forced into submission. His strength lay in his ability to move with the currents, to bend with the tides, never trying to hold them still, but instead letting them flow freely. There's something deeply profound in this idea. Power is not always about domination. It can be about understanding, about working in harmony with the forces that shape the world. Oceanus knew this, and it was this wisdom that made him one of the most powerful beings in existence. The sea is a force that cannot be fully controlled, no matter how much one may try. It is a reflection of the world itself, unpredictable and constantly shifting. And in this shifting, in this endless movement, there is a beauty and a strength that cannot be measured. Historians still debate the true nature of Oceanus' power. Was he truly as powerful as the gods of Olympus, or was his power simply a reflection of the ocean's own inherent might? Some believe that Oceanus' power came from his connection to the primordial forces that shaped the world, forces that predate even the gods themselves. Others argue that his power was not just about the ocean, but about his ability to understand the deeper mysteries of existence. After all, the sea is not just a physical place, it is a spiritual realm, one that holds the answers to many of the world's greatest questions. The ocean is a place of both life and death, creation and destruction, beauty and terror. And it is this duality that Oceanus embodied as you stand here on the shore, watching the waves rise and fall. You can almost feel the power of the Oceana, power that has been flowing for millennia, a force that has shaped the earth and all life upon it. This power, this ancient rhythm, was once Oceanus to command, and it was through his understanding of it that he ruled the seas. He didn't force the ocean to obey him. He allowed the ocean to guide him. In this, he was a master, not because of his strength, but because of his wisdom. But wisdom, it seems, is often overlooked in a world that values brute force. The Olympians, with their youthful ambition and hunger for power, were quick to dismiss the wisdom of Oceanus. They saw his detachment as a weakness, a sign that he didn't care about the world's struggles. But this couldn't have been further from the truth. Oceanus was a being of great depth. His understanding of the world went far beyond the simple struggles of power and control. He knew that the ocean was not just a tool to be used, but a force that connected all things. And it was this understanding that gave him power, not the power to rule, but the power to endure. Perhaps this is where Oceanus' true strength lay. While the Olympians fought and struggled for dominance, Oceanus watched from the edges, understanding that the forces at play were far greater than any one god or titan. His wisdom was his power. His ability to move with the tides, to bend with the winds, gave him a resilience that the Olympians could never understand. The ocean may be unpredictable, but it is also eternal. And in this eternity, there is a quiet strength. You may wonder, though, if Oceanus truly knew the depth of his own power, did he understand just how much influence he held over the world? Did he recognize that his connection to the ocean was not just a personal bond, but a deep cosmic force that could shape the course of history? Perhaps Oceanus never sought to wield his power in the same way as the gods of Olympus. Perhaps he didn't see his connection to the ocean as something to be flaunted or used for personal gain. Instead, he chose to watch and wait, to allow the ocean to flow as it would, trusting in its rhythms to guide the world. But as we all know, even the deepest rivers can change course. The forces of nature, like the gods themselves, are not static. They shift and change, sometimes in ways that can't be anticipated. Oceanus' power, though eternal, was not immune to this shifting. His understanding of the ocean's power was profound, but it wasn't enough to protect him from the winds of change that were blowing through the world. The rise of the Olympians marked a new age, one where the old gods, like Oceanus, were slowly being forgotten. His influence was waning, and though the ocean remained, Oceanus' presence within it began to fade. But even as his influence diminished, Oceanus' spirit lived on in the tides. The ocean, ever changing, continues to mirror the essence of the Titan who once ruled it. The waves rise and fall, the currents swirl, and the tides continue their eternal dance. Oceanus may have lost his seat at the table of the gods, but the power of the ocean, and in that power, there is a whisper, a reminder of the wisdom that once ruled the seas. Now, as you stand here, feeling the cold bite of the wind and hearing the waves crash against the shore, you can't help but feel that the ocean is alive with the power of Oceanus. His reign may have ended, but the ocean remains, its rhythms eternal, its power undeniable. And perhaps that is the greatest legacy of all, the enduring nature of the sea and the quiet wisdom of the Titan, who once ruled it. The soft moonlight still casts a silvery sheen over the water, as though the ocean itself is bathed in the remnants of the past. The waves, which once belonged to a Titan who ruled them with an understanding greater than any god or mortal, now seem to whisper of an age long lost to time. The era of the Titans is a story that has passed into myth, a time before the Olympians and their fiery ambition. But even in this passing, Oceanus' influence was undeniable. For it was his realm that witnessed the greatest change, the coming of the Olympians. To speak of the lost age of the Titans is to speak of a time when the world was ruled by beings of immense power. Beings who understood the forces of nature, like Oceanus himself. The Titans were not just gods. They were the fundamental powers that shaped the earth and all its elements. They were the primordial forces, gods of the sky, the earth, the sea, and all things in between. Each Titan embodied a natural force, and their reign was one of balance and understanding. Not conquest and war, but as history has shown us, even the greatest ages must end. The rise of the Olympians marked the end of the Titans' reign, and with it came the inevitable upheaval that shook the foundations of the world. The Olympians were young gods, full of ambition, driven by a hunger for power. They were bold where the Titans were wise, aggressive where the Titans were passive. The old order, with all its harmony, was no match for the Olympians' drive to reshape the world in their own image. As the world shifted, so did the balance of power. The Titans, once rulers of the cosmos, found themselves on the losing side of a battle they had no desire to fight, believing that the world would eventually return to its natural balance. But the rise of the Olympians was inevitable. For Oceanus, the loss of his power was not a defeat in battle, it was the slow and quiet erosion of his influence, a power shift that he couldn't have stopped even if he had chosen to fight. Historians argue over the exact details of the Titanomachy, the great war that pitted the Olympians against the Titans. Was it a war of pure conquest, or was it something more? Some scholars suggest that the Olympians' war against the Titans was motivated by a desire for supremacy, a belief that the old ways were too slow, too stagnant. Others argue that the rise of the Olympians was an inevitable consequence of time, that the gods of Olympus represented a new era, one that required change and upheaval to bring about a new world order. But regardless of the reasons, the outcome was clear. The Olympians triumphed, and the Titans were cast down. For Oceanus, this battle wasn't one of choice. His reign had been one of understanding and patience, not of conquest and war. His detachment from the conflict marked the beginning of his fall, but it was not a fall of his making. The ocean, after all, is a force that cannot be controlled by any single being, not even a Titan. Oceanus was no warrior. He had never sought to conquer the world, and in the end, that very indifference to power was what caused him to lose it. The ocean remained a powerful force, but it no longer belonged to the Titans. In the wake of the Olympian victory, Poseidon, Oceanus' once close brother, claimed dominion over the seas. Where Oceanus had ruled with wisdom and harmony, Poseidon ruled with strength and force. The seas were no longer the calm and balanced waters they once were. With Poseidon's rise, the tides became more turbulent, the storms more unpredictable, and the balance of the ocean began to shift. But even in this loss, Oceanus' spirit remained. His reign may have ended, but the ocean, the domain he had once ruled, remained as a reminder of his legacy. The ocean, like Oceanus himself, is eternal, a vast, endless force that cannot be contained or destroyed. It is a force that moves with the cycles of time, never staying the same, never stagnant. And in this, Oceanus' legacy endures not in the control he once held over the seas, but in the power and wisdom he imparted to them. The lost age of the Titans may have been swept away in the tides of time, but the power of the ocean remains. Oceanus' wisdom is embedded in every wave, every current, every tide that rises and falls. His legacy, though hidden beneath the surface, still exists in the depths of the sea, in the timeless movement of the waters. The ocean, like the Titan himself, endures beyond the passage of time, untouched by the struggles of gods and mortals alike. As the wind picks up, the waves crash harder against the shore. The ocean is not as it once was, but it is still a force of nature, still a place of mystery and power. The age of the Titans may be gone, but the ocean and the wisdom of Oceanus will remain forever, a testament to a time when the world was ruled by beings who understood the rhythms of the earth itself. The night deepens, and with it comes a profound sense of stillness. The ocean is calm once again, its rhythmic waves moving with the eternal pulse of the earth, but in the back of your mind, you hear a faint whisper, a reminder of the great Titan who once ruled the seas. Oceanus may have been forgotten by many, but the ocean remembers. And as long as the tides rise and fall, his legacy will never truly fade. The night is now fully upon you, the only light coming from the soft glow of the moon, reflected on the endless ocean. The wind whispers across the water, and you can almost feel the ocean's pulse, slow and steady. As you stand at the edge of the sea, you can't help but think about the rising power that had taken Oceanus' place, Poseidon, the Olympian god of the sea. His power, unlike Oceanus, was not about balance, it was about dominance. His reign marked the beginning of a new era, a time when the old gods, those who understood the world in its raw, elemental form, were replaced by those who sought to conquer it. The rise of the Olympians was a turning point in history, not just for the gods. The Titans, who had ruled the earth and the cosmos for eons, were swept aside in a wave of ambition. Poseidon, once a brother to Oceanus, now took command of the seas, and the very nature of the waters began to change. What had once been a realm of rhythm and balance, ruled by a Titan who understood the ocean's deeper mysteries, became a place of tumult, ruled by strength and force. Poseidon's rise to power was inevitable, but it was not without consequences. As the Olympians ascended, they brought with them a new worldview, one that valued conquest, strength, and the desire to reshape the world according to their own ambitions. They did not understand the natural rhythms that Oceanus had once governed. To them, the world was a place to be conquered and controlled, and they saw the Titans, with their ancient wisdom, as obstacles to be removed. The clash between the Olympians and the Titans was more than just a battle for power. It was a battle between two philosophies, two ways of understanding the world. The Olympians, with their youthful ambition, represented a new era, one that sought to impose order through force. The Titans, with their deep understanding of the natural world, represented the old order, one of harmony and balance. Oceanus, for all his wisdom, was caught between these two worlds. He was not a god of war, and he did not seek to impose his will on the earth. He believed in the natural order, in the ebb and flow of the tides, in the balance of the seas. But that balance, as we know, was shattered by the Olympians. Poseidon's ascension was a powerful symbol of this shift. While Oceanus had been content to rule the seas with patience and understanding, Poseidon sought to dominate them. The ocean, under Poseidon's rule, became a place of wild storms and unpredictable waves, a reflection of his own volatile nature. No longer was the sea a place of calm and harmony. It became a realm of power, force, and destruction. But in this shift, something was lost. The very essence of the ocean, its soul, was altered. Oceanus had understood the ocean's dual nature, its ability to nurture life and destroy it. He had seen the ocean not as something to be controlled, but as something to be respected. Poseidon, on the other hand, saw the sea as a tool, a weapon to be wielded in his quest for dominance. In doing so, he lost the delicate balance that Oceanus had once maintained. It's easy to think of Poseidon's rule as a simple transfer of power, but in reality, it was a fundamental shift in how the ocean was understood. Poseidon did not rule the sea in the same way Oceanus had. Where Oceanus had been a part of the ocean, embodying its rhythm and flow, Poseidon stood apart from it, using it as a means to an end. He sought to control the seas, to bend them to his will, and in doing so, he failed to understand the deeper mysteries of the waters. Historians debate the true nature of Poseidon's reign. Was he like Oceanus, a reflection of the ocean's primal forces? Or did he represent a more destructive aspect of the sea, one that was driven by ambition and power? Some argue that Poseidon's rule was necessary, that the Olympians needed to impose order on the world, that the Titan's reign had been too passive, too focused on balance. Others claim that Poseidon's rise marked the end of the ocean's natural harmony, the loss of a connection that had existed for millennia. Regardless of the debate, one thing is certain: with the rise of Poseidon, the ocean was no longer the peaceful, balanced realm it once was. The sea became a place of storms, of violent waves, of unpredictable currents. Poseidon ruled with strength and force, his temper as wild as the waters he commanded. The gentle, eternal rhythms of the ocean were drowned out by the roar of the waves, and the world was forever changed. But what of Oceanus? Where did he go in the wake of the Olympian rise? The answer, it seems, is more complicated than we might think. Oceanus did not vanish when the Olympians claimed victory. His power, his wisdom, still lingered in the waters. The ocean, after all, is vast. It cannot be wholly controlled by any single being, not even Poseidon. Oceanus' influence may have waned, but it was not completely erased. The ocean, in all its depth and mystery, still held echoes of his reign. In the quiet moments, when the sea is calm and the world seems still, you can almost hear Oceanus' voice in the whispers of the waves. His understanding of the ocean's true nature, its mystery, its eternal rhythms, still lives in the heart of the sea. Even under Poseidon's rule, the ocean remains a place of balance, a force that cannot be fully tamed. The rise of the Olympians may have marked the end of an era, but it did not mark the end of the ocean's story. As long as the tides rise and fall, as long as the waves crash against the shore, the legacy of Oceanus will live on. His wisdom, his connection to the ocean, remains embedded in the very fabric of the sea, a reminder of a time when the world was ruled by balance, not force. As you stand at the water's edge, you realize that the ocean story is far from over. The waves may be violent, the storms may rage, but beneath it all, there is a rhythm, a quiet force that moves through the waters. This is the legacy of Oceanus, the wisdom of the sea, the balance he once maintained, and the understanding that true power is not about domination, but about harmony with the world around you. The night air is heavy with the scent of salt water, and the sounds of the waves, once peaceful, now feel like the echo of an ancient story. The moonlight dances on the surface of the ocean, casting long shadows across the shore. You feel the chill of the water creeping into your bones, the ocean's presence palpable and all-encompassing. But even as you stand here, gazing out at the vast, endless horizon, you cannot help but feel the weight of what has been lost. The fall of Oceanus, the Titan who once ruled the seas with unmatched wisdom and balance. Oceanus was not defeated by brute force or the clash of weapons. His fall came not in battle, but in a quiet surrender, one brought on by his own decisions, his own beliefs. He had always been a Titan who understood the importance of balance, and in his wisdom, he chose not to engage in the war between the Olympians and the Titans. He believed that the world would eventually return to harmony, that the forces of nature would find their own balance, regardless of the outcome of the conflict. But in choosing not to fight, Oceanus sealed his fate. His detachment from the struggle for power was seen as weakness by those around him. His own children, the river gods who had once been loyal to him, turned against him, joining forces with the Olympians and forsaking the very balance that Oceanus had worked so hard to maintain. As the war raged on, Oceanus watched from the sidelines, his realm to ocean becoming a battlefield. Caught in the crossfire between the old order and the new dot, it wasn't that. Oceanus lacked power. His connection to the ocean was undeniable. His domain stretched across the seas, his influence reaching into the deepest depths of the waters. But his power was not one of conquest. It was the power of understanding, of knowing the rhythms of nature, and respecting the forces that shaped the world. His power lay in his ability to endure, to move with the tides, and adapt to the changing currents of time. But even the most enduring of forces can be worn down, and the tide of history was turning against him. The Olympians, with their youthful ambition and thirst for dominance, saw Oceanus as a relic of the past, a being too focused on maintaining balance to recognize the changing world around him. His refusal to choose sides in the conflict, his unwillingness to engage in the power struggles that defined the rise of the Olympians, marked him as irrelevant, even obsolete. And in this, Oceanus' greatest strength, the very wisdom that had made him a ruler, became his undoing. He had refused to fight, to claim his place in the new order, and in doing so, he had been cast aside. Historians still debate whether Oceanus truly understood the consequences of his inaction. Did he see the rise of the Olympians as inevitable? Did he believe that his neutral stance would preserve the balance of the world? Or did he simply choose to stay out of a conflict that he saw as beneath him, trusting that the natural order would prevail without his intervention? The answer remains unclear, but one thing is certain: Oceanus' fall was not a result of external forces. It was the result of his own choices, his own belief in the enduring power of balance. Oceanus' fall was not dramatic. It was not marked by a violent clash or a cataclysmic event. Instead, it was a slow, almost imperceptible shift, like the gradual erosion of the coastline, slowly worn down by the relentless power of the tides. Oceanus did not lose a battle. He simply faded into the background. His presence in the world diminished as the Olympians rose to power. His wisdom, once revered by all, was no longer valued in a world that demanded strength and conquest. And so Oceanus, the Titan who had once ruled the seas with such profound understanding, became a shadow of his former self, his power receding like the ebbing tide. But even in his fall, Oceanus remained a figure of great importance. He was not defeated in the traditional sense. His wisdom, his understanding of the world, could not be completely erased. The ocean, his domain, still carried his essence, still bore the imprint of his reign. Though he was no longer the dominant force in the world, his influence could still be felt in the very rhythms of the sea. The tides still rose and fell, the currents still flowed, and the creatures of the deep still swam in the waters that Oceanus had once ruled, as the Olympians took their place in the world. They may have forgotten Oceanus, but the ocean never did. His reign may have ended, but his legacy was eternal. The sea, like him, would endure. It would change. It would be reshaped by new forces. But it would never forget the Titan who had once ruled it with such wisdom and grace. Standing here, now, feeling the salt air on your skin, you realize that the fall of Oceanus is not the end of the story. His legacy lives on, not just in the physical realm of the ocean, but in the deeper currents of time. The ocean, in all its vastness, carries with it the memory of the Titan who once ruled it. Oceanus may have fallen from power, but he has not. been forgotten. His wisdom, his understanding of the balance of the world, still echoes in the waves that crash against the shore. The ocean is a force that cannot be controlled. It can be shaped, it can be influenced, but it cannot be dominated. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of Oceanus. Reign, that true power lies not in control, but in understanding. The Olympians may have risen to power, but they could never truly understand the ocean as Oceanus did. They could never see the deeper truths that lay beneath the surface, the rhythms of the tides, the balance of nature that Oceanus had known so intimately. The fall of Oceanus may have marked the end of an era, but the ocean remains, eternal and unyielding, and with it the legacy of the Titan who once ruled it. The cold wind carries the scent of the sea, a constant reminder of the vastness that surrounds you. The waves crash relentlessly, their rhythm both soothing and haunting. The ocean, though beautiful in its majesty, can also be a lonely place, much like the state that Oceanus found himself in. After the rise of the Olympians, as the tides of time shifted, so too did the course of Oceanus's fate. His kingdom, once vibrant and full of life, had begun to wither in isolation. For a god whose power had always been linked to the sea's ebb and flow, to be cut off from that connection was more than just a physical separation. It was a spiritual one. Oceanus, in his time of greatness, had ruled the oceans with a deep understanding of their power. He had always seen himself as part of the sea, rather than its master. But in the wake of his downfall, when the Olympians seized control, something essential had been lost. The sea, which had once mirrored his own moods and rhythms, no longer felt the same. It had become a place of force and anger under Poseidon's reign, a reflection of the volatile nature of the new gods. For Oceanus, the ocean was no longer his to command, and the disconnection from his domain left him adrift in a world that no longer understood him. It was not simply the loss of his throne that wounded Oceanus, it was the silence that followed the absence of the familiar pulse of the sea, the quiet rhythm of the waves that had once resonated so deeply with his soul. The ocean had been his home, his constant companion, but now it was ruled by another, and Oceanus found himself a stranger in the very world he had once shaped. The isolation he felt was not just the absence of his power, but the loss of his connection to the world itself. Historians argue whether Oceanus ever truly experienced this isolation in the way mortals might understand it. After all, he was a god, and gods were not bound by the same constraints as humans. But what Oceanus experienced was a form of alienation that transcended physical distance. The ocean was his essence, his being, and without it, he was adrift. The vastness of the sea, once a reflection of his boundless wisdom, now seemed endless and empty, a reminder of what had been lost. In many ways, this isolation was the most profound consequence of his fall. The loss of power and the shift in the ocean's nature were tangible, but the isolation, the deep, unshakable feeling of being cut off from everything he had known, was far more personal. Oceanus was not just a ruler. He was a part of the very forces that governed the earth, and to be cast out from that intimate connection left him vulnerable, not just to the world around him, but to the growing understanding that his time had passed. It is in this isolation that Oceanus truly became a forgotten figure. The Titans, once a mighty force in the world, were fading into myth, and with them, so too was Oceanus' legacy. The Olympians, with their drive for power and their ambition to reshape the world, had little room for those who sought to understand it rather than control it. Poseidon's rule over the seas was marked by strength, by storms and tempests, while Oceanus had always been the god of quiet endurance, of patience and wisdom. The very qualities that had once made him a great ruler were now seen as weaknesses in a world that was growing increasingly chaotic and unpredictable. As you stand at the edge of the sea, watching the waves crash against the shore, you realize that the isolation Oceanus felt was not simply physical, it was a spiritual exile. The sea that had once been his kingdom was no longer a place of solace. The rhythm of the tides, which had once mirrored his own, now felt foreign. It was as if the very essence of the ocean had changed, taking with it the connection that Oceanus had once shared with it. For a being who had lived in such harmony with nature, to be cut off from that harmony was a punishment worse than any defeat. Historians still debate the nature of Oceanus' downfall. Some believe that his refusal to engage in the conflict between the Olympians and the Titans was a fatal mistake, that his detachment from the world around him led to his isolation. Others argue that it was his failure to recognize the changing tides of time, to adapt to the rise of the Olympians, that left him vulnerable. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Oceanus was a being of profound wisdom, but even the wisest of beings are not immune to the passage of time. Oceanus may have been cast aside by the Olympians, but his fall was not the end of his story. His essence, like the ocean itself, endures. The waves that crash against the shore, the tides that rise and fall, they are all reminders of the Titan who once ruled them. Even in his isolation, Oceanus' legacy lives on. The ocean in all its mystery and power still carries his spirit, still reflects his wisdom. The currents may have changed, but the rhythms of the sea, the eternal ebb and flow remain the same. The isolation that Oceanus felt is not just a story of a forgotten god. It is a story of change, of how time and the world itself can leave even the most powerful beings feeling adrift. The ocean, once his to command, has become a reminder of what was lost, a reflection of the changing tides of fate. And yet, in the depths of that isolation, there is still a whisper, quiet call that echoes across the waves. For even in his solitude, Oceanus' power has not been extinguished. It remains in the sea, in the currents, in the rhythms that still guide the world. As you listen to the soft murmurs of the waves, you realize that Oceanus' story is not one of defeat, it is one of transformation. Even in isolation, his legacy endures, carried by the very forces he once governed. And as the ocean's eternal rhythm continues, so too does the story of the Titan who ruled it, now whispered in the depths of time, waiting to be remembered once more. The ocean roars louder now, the wind whipping in from the horizon, as though it carries with it the remnants of a long-forgotten story. You feel the salt air in your lungs, a reminder of the sea's power and its eternal presence. But as you stand on the shore, the sound of the waves is different this time. There's an undercurrent to it, a sense of something buried deep beneath the surface, something waiting to be discovered. It is the legacy of Oceanus, not just in the water itself, but in his children, those who were born from his essence. The river gods who once held great power in their own right. Oceanus may have ruled the seas, but his true legacy lay in his progeny, the many children who were born from his union with his sister Tethys. These children, gods of rivers and freshwaters, were his heirs, and they carried with them the power of the oceans and the rivers, the essence of their fathers. Wisdom and understanding. Yet, as time wore on, they too were swept away by the rising tides of change. The rise of the Olympians marked the beginning of a new age, and the once mighty children of Oceanus were scattered across the world, lost to the currents of fate. You can almost hear the whispers of these forgotten gods, their voices carried on the wind. Achelous, the great river god of the Achelous River, once a powerful figure in Greek mythology, his name lost to the riverbanks. Alpheus, the river god who chased the nymph Arethusa, his passion immortalized in a tale of love and transformation. And even the sacred Nile, whose waters once nurtured civilizations, now a mere shadow of the past. These gods, born of the deep and the flowing currents, no longer held the influence they once did. In the world of the Olympians, their power was diminished, their stories relegated to myth. It is said that Oceanus had many children, each of them a god of the rivers, each with their own domain. They were once revered, their waters considered sacred, and their currents essential to the natural balance of the world. But with the rise of the Olympians, their roles in the grand order shifted. Poseidon, once a brother to Oceanus, took command of the seas, relegating Oceanus's children to the edges of the world. Their powers diminished, their significance reduced. Some historians believe that Oceanus' children were forgotten not because they were weak or inconsequential, but because the world was changing. The rise of the Olympians marked a shift in how the world was perceived. The Olympians, with their youthful ambition and thirst for power, sought to dominate the world. And the ancient gods, those who represented the natural order and the wisdom of the earth, were cast aside. The river gods, born from Oceanus' very being, became relics of the past, their power no longer recognized in the new world order. Yet even in their diminished state, the legacy of Oceanus' children still lingers. The rivers still flow, their waters carrying the memories of the gods who once ruled them. The Achelous River still winds through the land, the Alpheus River still runs with its ancient waters, and the Nile, though now distant from its original power, continues to nourish civilizations. Their names may be forgotten, their stories dimmed by time, but their essence remains in the waters that sustain the world. The river gods, like Oceanus, are eternal, carried not in the dominance of power, but in the quiet flow of the waters, the rhythm that continues to pulse through the veins of the earth. Historians still debate the fate of Oceanus' children. Did they fade away, their power dissipating with the rise of the Olympians? Or did they adapt, finding new roles in the ever-changing world? Some argue that the river gods, in their loss of influence, retreated into the background of mythology, becoming mere symbols of nature, rather than active players in the divine drama. Others believe that they found new ways to exist, their power hidden beneath the surface, flowing quietly beneath the tumult of the Olympians' rule. Perhaps in the end, the story of Oceanus' children is one of adaptation. They were not defeated by force, they simply adapted to the new world, finding their place in the ebb and flow of time. Just as the rivers change course over the years, so too did they shift and transform, their roles altered by the forces around them. They may no longer have held the same influence they once did, but they were still a part of the world's natural balance, still essential to the flow of life. As you stand by the water, watching the waves crash against the shore, you can almost feel the presence of Oceanus' children in the currents. Their essence is still in the rivers, in the seas, in the very waters that sustain life. They may have been forgotten by the gods of Olympus, but they have not been forgotten by the earth. The river gods, like their father, endure, their influence still felt in the flow of the waters, in the cycles of nature that continue without interruption. Oceanus' children may be lost to history, but they are not lost to the world. Their waters still run deep, their currents still shape the land, and in this, their legacy lives, Anna, reminder that even in the face of change, even in the face of betrayal and loss, the forces of nature endure. Just as the tides rise and fall, so too do the stories of the past persist, carried on the wind, in the water, in the very rhythms of the earth. The night has grown deeper, and the moonlight now casts an ethereal glow over the water. The ocean, as always, pulses with its eternal rhythm, the ebb and flow of the tides. Yet tonight, something feels different. The wind shifts, and the sea seems to breathe deeper, as though it carries within it secrets long forgotten. There is a mystery in the depths of the ocean, something that calls to you, a whisper that lingers just beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. It is a call that once echoed through the heart of Oceanus. Oceanus may have been cast aside by the Olympians, and his reign may have ended in a slow, quiet decline, but his presence, like the sea itself, was never truly gone. The ocean is vast, its depths unexplored, its secrets hidden beneath layers of salt water and time. There are parts of the sea that even the gods dare not tread, places where the water runs so deep and the pressure so intense that it is impossible to reach. These are the places where Oceanus' true power resides, places where the whispers from the abyss linger, waiting to be heard by those who are willing to listen. As you stand at the edge of the shore, the air heavy with the scent of salt, you realize that the ocean is not just a physical force. It is a spiritual realm, one that holds the collective memory of the world. Oceanus, though no longer a ruler in the traditional sense, is still part of that realm. His influence flows through the waters, undetected by most, but ever present. His wisdom, his understanding of the natural world, still echoes in the deep, still whispers in the currents, still resonates in the quiet spaces between the waves. Historians often debate whether the ocean itself can hold memory, whether the tides carry the stories of those who have come before. Some believe that the sea, in all its vastness, is a repository of ancient knowledge, a living archive that holds the memories of the world. Others argue that the ocean is a chaotic force, forever shifting and changing, with no room for the past. But when you stand here, listening to the ocean's call, you can feel it the presence of something ancient, something eternal. The ocean has a memory, and within that memory, there are whispers that tell the story of Oceanus, the titan who once ruled the seas. The whispers from the abyss are not just stories of power or dominance. They are the stories of balance, of harmony with nature, of wisdom that transcends time. Oceanus was not just a ruler of the seas, he was a part of them. His power lay in his ability to understand the natural rhythms of the world, to move with the currents rather than against them. And in that understanding he became one with the ocean, his essence woven into the very fabric of the waters. Yet, the ocean is not simply a place of serenity. It is a place of both creation and destruction, of life and death. The abyss, where the darkest depths of the ocean lie, holds both the treasures of the world and its hidden dangers. There in the quiet, forgotten spaces, Oceanus' legacy is not one of dominance, but of endurance. His influence is not one of power over the sea, but a quiet understanding of its true nature. The ocean does not need to be controlled, needs to be respected. And Oceanus, in his wisdom, understood this better than any other god. As you listen to the soft murmur of the waves, you realize that the whispers from the abyss are not just remnants of the past. They are alive, moving through the waters, carried by the currents passed from one generation to the next. Oceanus may have been forgotten by the gods of Olympus, but the ocean remembers him. His wisdom, his connection to the waters is still alive in the deep, still carried in the tide. The ocean is a place of mystery, of secrets hidden beneath its surface, and in these secrets lies the true legacy of Oceanus. The Olympians, in their quest for power, may have reshaped the world in their image, but they could not erase the ancient rhythms of the sea. The ocean will always remember, and in its depths, Oceanus' wisdom will continue to echo through time. Historians still argue about the true nature of the ocean. Some believe it is a place of destruction, a force to be feared and controlled. Others see it as a place of life, a source of nourishment and renewal. But perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. The ocean is both a giver and a taker, both a creator and a destroyer. It is a force that cannot be tamed, but only understood. And it is in this understanding that Oceanus' true power lies. His reign may have ended, but his legacy continues to flow through the waters. A quiet reminder of the wisdom that once ruled the seas. As you stand at the edge of the ocean, the whispers of the abyss seem to call to you, urging you to listen, to hear the stories that have been carried through the tides. Oceanus may have faded from the world, but the ocean will always carry his memory. The waves will continue to rise and fall, the currents will continue to flow, and the legacy of the Titan who once ruled the seas will never truly be forgotten. The ocean's whispers may be faint, but they are never silent. They are the echoes of the past, the stories of a time when the world was ruled by beings who understood the true power of nature. And in the depths of the ocean, beneath the surface. The whispers from the abyss continue to tell that story, waiting to be heard. The sea has quieted now, and in its stillness, you are left with only the sound of your breath and the occasional lap of water against the shore. The moon hangs high above, its silvery light reflected across the vast expanse of the ocean. But as you stand here, feeling the coolness of the night and the hum of the world around you, there's a nagging sense that something is missing, something that has been lost, perhaps forever. The ocean, though beautiful and eternal, carries with it remnants of a time long past. Oceanus, the titan of the seas, may have faded into the background of history, but his legacy, like the sea itself, has not been erased. His remains, though forgotten by the gods, still linger in the depths. The ocean, vast and untamed, is a living testament to Oceanus. His reign over the waters was one of wisdom, harmony, and understanding. And in the very currents and tides that still ebb and flow, his essence can still be felt. It may not be immediately obvious, but it is therein, the rhythm of the sea, in the way the waves rise and fall, in the deep, silent pulse of the water. Oceanus may have been cast aside by the Olympians, his power relegated to myth, but his connection to the sea is eternal. Oceanus' fall was not one of defeat in battle or a catastrophic event. No, it was more subtle than that. It was the slow fading of an age, the quiet erosion of his power and influence, like the gradual wearing down of a cliffside by the relentless pull of the tides. His connection to the ocean, once so powerful and all-encompassing, began to fade as Poseidon, his brother, took control. The sea became a place of force and destruction under Poseidon's reign, and in this change, Oceanus' presence began to feel distant, as if the waters themselves had forgotten the wisdom that once ruled them. Yet, as the ocean stretches endlessly before you, you realize that the remains of Oceanus are not gone. They are embedded in the very fabric of the sea. His wisdom may have been overshadowed by the rise of the Olympians, but it has not been erased. The sea carries the memory of its former ruler, and in its depths there are still echoes of his reign. The ocean is not simply a force of chaos and destruction. It is a force of creation and balance, a reflection of the wisdom that once flowed through Oceanus himself. The rhythms of the tides, the quiet ebb and flow of the currents, are reminders of a time when the sea was ruled not by force, but by understanding. Oceanus may have fallen into isolation, his influence weakened, but his power was never fully extinguished. The sea, in all its majesty, continues to carry his legacy. The waves, though often wild and unpredictable, still follow a rhythm, a dance that has existed since time began. The currents, though sometimes turbulent, still flow in, a pattern that reflects the harmony that Oceanus once maintained. And even as Poseidon now claims dominion over the seas, the ocean remembers the Titan who ruled it before him. It is said that when a god's reign ends, they fade into the ether, their power forgotten and their influence diminished. But for Oceanus, this was not the case. His remains, though unseen, are still present in the very nature of the ocean itself. His understanding of the sea's true nature, his connection to its eternal rhythm, lives on in the waters that continue to shape the world. Oceanus was not a god of domination. He was a god of patience, of endurance. His reign may have ended, but his influence continues to pulse through the ocean's currents, carried by the tides that rise and fall. As you stand at the water's edge, you sense that the ocean is more than just a body of water, is a living memory, a repository of the past, holding within it the stories of all who have come before. Oceanus may no longer be the ruler of the seas, but his presence lingers in every wave, in every ripple that travels across the surface of the water. The ocean is his legacy, and in its depths, there are still remnants of his power, waiting to be rediscovered. Oceanus' remains are not just physical, they are spiritual, woven into the very essence of the ocean. The sea is a place of both life and death, of creation and destruction, and in this duality, Oceanus' spirit lives on. The waves that crash against the shore are not just the product of Poseidon's reign, they are a continuation of the eternal dance that Oceanus once governed. The sea may have changed, but it has never truly forgotten the Titan who first taught it to move with grace. With balance and with understanding, historians and scholars may debate the true nature of Oceanus' legacy. But you need only look to the ocean to understand it. The waves are his voice, the tides his breath. The rhythm of the sea, steady and unyielding, is the echo of his reign. The ocean is his domain, not because he controlled it, but because he understood it in a way that no other god could. And in this understanding, he found his power not in domination, but in harmony. As the night deepens and the moon continues its silent watch over the ocean, you feel a deep sense of connection to the vastness before you. Oceanus' legacy is not something that can be erased or forgotten. It is embedded in the sea itself, woven into the very fabric of the world. The ocean is more than just a body of water, is a living testament to the Titan who once ruled it. And his influence will continue to flow through the currents for as long as the tides rise and fall. The remains of Oceanus are not lost. They are part of the ocean, part of the world. And as long as the sea continues to whisper its ancient song, his legacy will endure. As the night deepens and the moonlight shimmers across the vast ocean, you feel an almost otherworldly connection to the sea. The wind has died down now, and the waves have softened, moving with the steady rhythm of the tide. There's something almost serene about this moment, as if the world is holding its breath. The ocean, vast and unyielding, is both a reflection of the world and a force in itself, an ever-changing and yet constant. In this moment, it's clear that the ocean is not just a part of the world, but a living, breathing entity that holds within it the wisdom of the ages. And within that eternal flow, you realize that Oceanus' legacy is far from over. In fact, it may be more alive than ever. The tides are relentless. They rise and fall unstoppable, regardless of who rules the seas or who holds dominion over the world above. Time has a way of shifting, changing the power structures, but the ocean remains constant, its rhythm carrying the memories of all those who have come before. Oceanus may have fallen from power, but the ocean, his domain, continues to carry his spirit, his essence, through its endless ebb and flow. His understanding of the natural world, his profound connection to the rhythms of the earth, is still present in every ripple of the water, in every wave that crashes against the shore. The ocean is not a place of finality. It is a place of perpetual movement. Like the tides, time moves in cycles. And just as the water flows eternally, so too does the memory of Oceanus. He may no longer have control over the seas in the way that Poseidon does, but in the deep currents of the ocean, he still has a presence. His power lies not in domination, but in endurance. The ocean, ever shifting, is a reflection of his strength. It does not conquer, it simply exists. Flowing in accordance with the natural rhythms of life, Oceanus may have lost his throne, but he was never fully erased from the world. The eternal tide, the ceaseless rise and fall of the ocean, is his true kingdom. He was never a king in the traditional sense. He was a guardian of balance, a force that understood the importance of harmony in nature. His fall, though tragic, was not a final defeat. It was a transformation. The ocean, after all, is a place of both life and death, of creation and destruction. The tides do not cease with the passing of one ruler, for they belong to the earth itself. The true power of Oceanus was not in his ability to control the sea, but in his understanding of it. The ocean cannot be controlled. It is a force that cannot be tamed, and its rhythms are ever-changing, yet it endures. Oceanus understood that the sea was not something to be dominated. It was something to be respected, something to be in harmony with, and in this understanding he found true strength. Even as Poseidon took his place as the ruler of the seas, Oceanus' essence continued to flow through the waters, forever intertwined with the eternal tide in the deep, silent places of the ocean where the light barely reaches. Oceanus' wisdom still resonates. His connection to the natural world, to the endless cycle of life and death, is still present in the ocean's depths. His reign may have ended, but his influence is not so easily erased. The ocean, in all its vastness and complexity, still carries the mark of the Titan who once understood its depths like no other. The eternal tide is a reminder that nothing truly ends, merely transforms. Oceanus's legacy, then, is not one of power or dominance. It is a legacy of endurance, of understanding, and of the quiet wisdom that allows the world to continue turning, even in the face of change. Just as the tides continue to rise and fall, so too does his presence linger in the ocean's depths, a quiet force that will never fade. The rise of the Olympians, the fall of the Titans, the passing of ages, these things come and go, but the ocean remains, and with it, the wisdom of Oceanus remains, carried by the tides, ever moving, ever present, as you stand at the shore, feeling the coolness of the water on your feet. You realize that you are connected to something far larger than yourself. The ocean is not just a place, it is a force, an entity that has witnessed the rise and fall of gods and civilizations alike. The ocean will continue to ebb and flow, to give life and to take it, just as it always has. And in this eternal rhythm, the legacy of Oceanus endures not in the control of the seas, but in the understanding of their true power. The ocean, with all its depth and mystery, is a testament to the lasting power of Oceanus. He may no longer sit on a throne, but his presence is felt in every wave that crashes on the shore, in every current that moves beneath the surface. The ocean is his domain, not because he rules it, but because he understands it, and in this understanding he lives on forever, part of the eternal tide. The wind carries the whisper of the sea, and in it you hear the voice of Oceanus, quiet yet unyielding, moving with the rhythm of the waves. The tide rises once more, and with it, the story of the Titan who ruled the seas continues, carried on the current, ever changing, ever present, just as it always has been. The night has deepened, and the world feels still, as though all things are holding their breath. The ocean, vast and endless, stretches out before you, its surface a smooth, dark mirror reflecting the stars. The moon is high now, casting a soft, silvery light that dances across the water, making it shimmer with an ethereal glow. The sound of the waves is gentle tonight, a soft hum that seems to reverberate through the very air, filling the silence with the whispers of the sea. And in those whispers you can feel the presence of something ancient, something timeless. It is Oceanus, the Titan of the seas, whose spirit still lingers within these waters. Quietly, eternally, the ocean has always been a place of mystery, a realm where the known and unknown meet. For millennia, the seas have held the stories of the world, stories of creation, of destruction, of life and death. And at the heart of these stories lies Oceanus, whose reign was not one of conquest, but of balance. Though his physical power has faded, his influence is not so easily erased. The sea still carries his essence, his understanding of the natural world, and the wisdom that shaped his reign. You can feel it now in the gentle pull of the tide, in the rhythm of the waves, in the way the water moves with purpose. Oceanus was never a ruler of force. His power did not lie in the ability to dominate, but in the ability to understand, to move with the currents rather than against them. He knew that the ocean, like the world itself, was in constant motion, shifting and changing with time. And in this understanding he found his strength. Even now, as the Olympians rule the heavens and the seas, the whispers of Oceanus' wisdom continue to flow through the waters. His legacy is not one of power, but of quiet endurance, of harmony with nature, of the eternal rhythm of the tides, in the depths of the sea. Where the light cannot reach, there is a silence, a profound stillness, that speaks of eternity. The ocean holds the memory of all who have lived, and within it, there are whispers of those who came before. Oceanus' spirit is part of that memory, carried by the currents that move beneath the surface, flowing through the world untouched by time. His reign may have ended, but the ocean, like the tide itself, cannot be controlled. It moves with the natural rhythms of the earth, eternal and unchanging. Just as Oceanus once did. Historians and scholars may argue about the fate of Oceanus, about the reasons for his fall and his eventual fading from the world of the gods. But the ocean, in all its vastness, is not concerned with such things. It does not care for the petty struggles of gods and mortals. It simply moves, flows, and endures. And in this, there is a lesson that Oceanus understood better than anyone. True power lies not in domination, but in endurance. The ocean does not seek to conquer, it simply is. And in that simplicity, there is a strength that cannot be erased. As you stand here on the shore, watching the waves crash softly against the rocks, you begin to understand that the legacy of Oceanus is not a story of defeat, but of transformation. His reign may have ended, but his essence is woven into the very fabric of the ocean. The tides will continue to rise and fall, the currents will continue to flow, and the rhythm of the sea will continue to move with the passage of time. And with each ebb and flow, the legacy of Oceanus lives on, quietly, softly, in the whispers of the sea. Oceanus may no longer be the ruler of the seas, but he is not gone. His wisdom, his understanding, and his connection to the ocean endure, in the depths, in the flow of the tides, in the eternal rhythm of the sea. The ocean, like the world, is constantly changing, constantly evolving. But even in this change, the essence of Oceanus remains a force not of control, but of harmony. A reminder of a time when the world moved with grace and understanding. The sea is not just a place of water, it's a realm of memory, of story, of life. And within that realm, Oceanus' spirit continues to speak. The whispers of the sea are his whispers, carried on the wind, carried on the tide. They are the echoes of a time when wisdom ruled the world, when balance and harmony were the forces that shaped the earth. Though the world may have moved on, the ocean remains, carrying with it the legacy of the Titan who once ruled it. And in that legacy, there is a quiet power, a strength that endures beyond the passage of time. As you listen to the gentle rhythm of the waves, you realize that you too are part of this eternal flow. The sea, in its vastness, is not separate from you. It is part of you, as it is part of all life. And as long as the tides continue to rise and fall, as long as the waves continue to crash upon the shore, the whispers of Oceanus will live on silent, eternal and ever-present in the depths of the sea Tao. As you stand on the edge of the world, feeling the pull of the ocean, you understand that Oceanus has not been forgotten. He is part of the rhythm, part of the tide. His spirit flows through the waters, and with each wave that rises, it is as if the ocean itself is calling him home, calling him back into the depths, where his legacy can endure, undisturbed by the passage of time. As the night deepens further, the ocean seems to embrace the silence that has settled over the world. The waves continue their timeless dance, rising and falling, moving with an ancient rhythm that seems almost to whisper secrets to the stars above. The breeze that once held the weight of a story now feels lighter, as though the night itself is slowing down, taking a moment to rest. In this stillness, the ocean feels both vast and intimate in eternal presence, yet an ever-changing force. You stand at the water's edge, the coolness of the sea brushing against your skin, and for a moment the world feels suspended between the tides. The story of Oceanus, the Titan who once ruled the seas, lingers in the quiet waves. Though his reign has ended, the wisdom he imparted to the waters, the harmony he brought to the world, still flows through the tides, shaping the oceans as they continue their endless cycle. The whispers of the sea have faded, but their presence remains. In the soft crash of the waves, in the gentle pull of the tide, there is a reminder that Oceanus' legacy is never truly gone. The rhythm of the ocean, the quiet endurance of the tides, carries with it the echo of his wisdom, quiet, profound, and eternal. The ocean moves, and with it, the story of the Titan who once understood it better than anyone. Now, with the final whisper of the sea, you feel a sense of peace, as if the world has come full circle. The ocean continues, as it always has, its eternal flow, undisturbed by time. Oceanus may have faded from the world of gods, but his spirit lives on, carried by the waves, the tides, and the endless ebb and flow of the sea.